In this video, we're going to look at how to factor special products. We're going to start with perfect square trinomials. And here is basically how you could factor what we call perfect square trinomials. They're called perfect square trinomials because it's something times itself. If I multiply a plus b times itself, a plus b times a plus b, we would get this product. If I did a minus b times a minus b and multiplied it out, we would get this product. So I'm going to refer to these as our recipes. That's what I'm going to call it for this video. These are our recipes. Okay? And so what I'm looking at is I'm looking at a trinomial here that's going to factor. And I can see that this trinomial fits this form right here. Okay? And so what I'm doing is I'm going to write it right below it. So we have a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. And you can just kind of look and see how this recipe applies to this trinomial. For example, it looks like our a value is x. So our a value is x. It looks like our b value, some number squared, is 100. So it looks like our b value is 10. And if I multiplied 2 times x times 10, I would get 20x. So this would all work. Okay? So what I'm going to do next is in the same way that this trinomial factors to a minus b squared, I can factor this up in the numerator to a minus b squared. And so that's kind of like our shortcut. We could go through the whole factoring process with this perfect square trinomial, but if we can recognize that this fits this form, that it's a perfect square trinomial, we can instantly factor it here. This is one of those types of ideas that you'll get better at it with the more practice you get, and it will almost never be necessary. We can always factor this using our algorithm, but having the shortcut is helpful at times. All right, in these examples, we're going to do a few more. And so if I look, these are very similar, and so this would be a problem where you can look and try to match it to these. And you can see once again we've got the difference, okay? And so I'm going to just write our recipe right below it. So we have a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. And so our question is, okay, well, I know this will factor to a minus b squared. We just got to figure out what the a and b are, really, and then we'll have this trinomial up here factored. And so if I know some number squared equals 16p squared, well, what times itself gives us 16p squared? And you're hopefully saying, well, that means a must be 4p. And then over here, you're looking at, okay, what number squared gives you 25q squared? And hopefully you're looking at saying, okay, what times itself gives us 25q squared? Well, that would be 5q. And so our factored form of our trinomial would be 4p minus 5q. If you weren't sure, you could come over here to the side. I'm not going to go through all this work right now, but if I take 4p minus 5q and I multiply by 4p minus 5q and I multiply that out with distribution or FOIL or whatever you want to call it, you should end up back at this trinomial right here. And now I've got our last example. I'm looking here. I can see that my first term is a perfect square. I can see that my last term is a perfect square. So it seems to be fitting these forms for the most part. And so let's just kind of jump into it and see if it works. Because these are both addition, I think that if anything is going to fit this form up here, we're going to have, our factored form will be something plus something squared. We just got to figure out what the a and the b are. So I'm going to write my recipe below it. So a squared plus 2ab plus b squared equals a plus b squared. If we can identify a and b, we're good. So I'm going to look at this term first and say, okay, some value squared, some a value squared gives us 36x squared y squared. And if we look at that, that would mean that some number times itself, some a value times itself gives us 36x squared y squared. Well, 6 times 6 is 36, x times x is x squared, and y times y is y squared. So that's going to be our a value. That's going to be the first term in our factored form. And then let's come over and do it for the b value. The b value is actually a lot easier. What number squared equals 49? Well, that's an easy 7. So we could multiply this out and make sure it works. But if you ever weren't sure, remember this middle term. This is where we got to double check. If I multiply 2 times a times b, I should get 84xy. So 2 times 6xy times 7 would actually give you 84xy. So we're good there. This would be our factored form. I want to re-emphasize that I'm probably not ever going to expect you to just go straight from here to here. You could factor this using our algorithm, but it gets a little bit tricky. So I want you to be familiar with these, what I call the recipes. But there's not going to be a whole lot of times when you just have to have these memorized without a formula chart.